Good morning, everybody. Good morning. This is Carlie Houchins. I am the Director of Learning Solutions at Catapult. And Joni, I'm going to ask you to tell me when we're going to be ready to start. It looks like we've got about 30 folks joining us so far.
Yeah, I would say you can go ahead and start.
Okay, great. Well, good morning to all of you. And thank you so much for joining us, taking time out of your busy day and busy week to learn a little bit more about the opportunities that Catapult offers you and some general thinking on management development, a key business strategy. We welcome you, and we want to make sure that you are always reminded of why Catapult exists. We are here, our mission statement is to provide employers with the confidence to navigate everyday operational challenges, making workplaces more effective and employees more successful. And it's really that last phrase that I and my team really focus on, the employees being more successful through training and development opportunities that we offer to our members, and therefore your workplaces are more effective, and as an organization, you become more confident. So we are always wanting to remind you of why we exist, and you are why we exist, the employers who are members of Catapult. Just a quick one more thing about Catapult. We've been around about 65 years, providing HR support. We have the experience and support employers with services in the HR area and employment law, advice, customized services, and so much more. So we always welcome your outreach so that we can support you with expertise, with resources, and bandwidth. So just remind you of how to get in touch with us and phone numbers there. The final thing that I'll point out to you is that although you're joining today to hear about management development, which is one of the areas that my team focuses in on, the employer solutions that you have access to from Catapult run the gamut. So as members, you have access to HR advice 24/7, all kinds of data around salary and trends in pre-employment, background checking and applicant screening, compensation and total rewards programs, looking at wage and salary surveys. Of course, my area, the learning and development area, and our portfolio of learning products isn't just management development, but it also includes technical skills, or otherwise known as computer skills, professional development, HR certification, and so forth. And then obviously our strategic HR solutions, so fractional, outsourced HR support for your organization, assessments and coaching, and so forth. So we really take seriously the opportunity to support our members and provide a variety of services, training, and tools that you all can make use of in order to support your businesses and grow with confidence. So I am Carlie Houchins. I'm the Director of Learning and Development at Catapult, and I oversee a team of facilitators who deliver our courses, as well as a group of folks who are in the operations area, making sure that everything runs smoothly. And so I'm happy to be here to represent that team and to talk with you about the topic of management development. So first, we're going to talk about management development, why as organizations, it's important to pay attention to developing managers, but we're also going to talk about what happens if you don't, the downside, some of the potential negative consequences of not paying attention to development of managers. And so let's start on the positive. And you probably could come up with this on your own, but it's always good to be reminded of the benefits of developing managers. And this really applies whether your folks are new to the role, they don't have to be young to be new to the role, or they are already been in management or are very experienced or even senior within your organization. And just want to point out a number of benefits that accrue to your organization as you go through the steps to develop managers. One of the most important is the retention of talent. And I think that that is a factor that many organizations, many of our members have dealt with over the last 3, 4, 5 years of just a constant need to hire and retain. And as we, looked into this, I picked up some statistics that I thought might be useful to you just to understand the environment that you're dealing with. When it comes to talent retention, a survey that we came across from Gallup indicated that 87% of millennials rate growth and development opportunities as very important to them. And what it really does is it demonstrates an organization's commitment to their employees to grow in their careers and to advance. And that commitment goes both ways. Organizations showing commitment, employees staying in place and growing with your organization. A corollary, a similar type of benefit is the succession planning. And this is a constant challenge. Deloitte produced a study that showed that 86% of companies rate leadership as a challenge, a retention and planning for the future. And only 14% felt like that they were doing it well, that they were actually doing it well. And just in general, the pipeline of leaders and folks ready to step into the next level in management, most organizations find that they're short. They don't have enough folks that are prepared to take on that next level of responsibility. That may be a case in some of your organizations. This dual idea of retaining good talent and having them ready for the next level. Other benefits that come along with management development, you typically, no surprise, I'm sure to anybody here, the increase in performance that comes along with the development of new skills, the acquisition of new knowledge, and how that could ultimately affect the income and the financial performance of your organization. The fact that your folks are better equipped to lead teams and to make informed decisions and drive performance improvements that really result in the overall productivity and efficiency and better business outcomes for your organization. And interestingly, the idea of innovation and adaptability, innovation has been, in my opinion, kind of a big buzzword in lots of organizations and in industries across the world. And the idea that management development contributes to that, allowing for leadership within the organization that encourages that kind of proactive adaptability to change and to think creatively and to embrace change and develop new ideas really comes from strong signals and leadership within the organization. So having managers that see the value in innovation and adaptability, they're ready for it, they're encouraging it amongst the rest of the employees in the organization, really creates a culture that drives innovation. And it's really, at the end of the day, it's the people in the corporate culture that make the innovation and adaptability so key to corporate business success. These things really add up to a competitive advantage for organizations. So management development is ultimately a competitive advantage that organizations really have to pay attention to as you develop strong leaders and through development programs. They anticipate and demonstrate higher than average effective response according to the Harvard Business Review. And Deloitte did a study that showed how mature leadership development programs provide exponential success to their organizations as opposed to other organizations that have less mature leadership development programs. So management development ends up affecting the bottom line. And knowing that many of you have the audience of an executive, president, an owner who is going to ask those kinds of questions, I thought it was important that we talk about the impact on the bottom line, the financial success, the competitiveness of organizations as a consequence of management development within organizations. A few other positives that come with management development. And these really kind of, in my mind, all hang together in terms of culture, organizational alignment, and employee engagement. And the, again, goes back to the investment that management development really translates into for employees. They see that the organization has been willing to give time and resources to prepare them for a bigger role, for greater impact on the organization. And so these benefits really all accrue, and not necessarily all at the same time, but collectively really drive organizational success and employee success as you go through management development types of experiences. And while my world focuses on the training and the classes, the idea is that management development happens at a number of levels. And, you know, it's leaders who model behavior. It is co-workers and peers who reinforce good management traits and help to support each other. And so these types of benefits really come to the organization. It really should be seen as an investment, not so much as a cost, because of the yields that management development, that investment can return, saving you money in terms of employee retention. You're not hiring, you're not constantly churning through, increased performance, the innovation that can come as a result, and the competitive advantage. So the business results, the organizational bottom line can truly be affected by positive and ongoing management development within your organization. So what about when it doesn't? And I'm sure if I could bring everybody off, you know, on camera and ask a few questions, I'd love to, maybe if in your chat, maybe if any of you want to post some experience that you maybe have had in a situation where when management development doesn't happen in an organization, obviously not in your current one, but perhaps in a past experience, the consequences can be equally impactful on an organization. And if you have experiences or ideas that you'd like to share that really point to why it's so important to do this from a positive standpoint, the negatives are always helpful in pointing us in the right direction. But I'll go on and give you some ideas about what research I did that really point to a number of consequences for organizations. The first one was stagnation, the idea that you just get stuck. And as managers and leaders within an organization, the lack of introduction of new ideas, new methods, new skills, new information really leave people in a place where they just continue to do what they've always done, using outdated practices, or stuck in a place where they're dealing with problems and they just don't know how to adapt. They don't know how to deal with changes in the business environment. And so your organization takes the risk of stagnation. Another consequence or risk that's associated with not effectively developing managers in a positive direction is the lack of ability to lead. If as much as we'd like to think that there are some folks that are born leaders, the reality is that leadership is a set of skills, an understanding of how to motivate teams, how to inspire people and point them in the direction that the organization wants them to do, or to go, excuse me. And if they're ineffective in that leadership effort, you end up with organizations, people working for you that are unproductive, have low morale, and don't perform at the level that your organization needs them to. So lack of management development really leads to some pretty serious consequences. Those same employees that are low morale and low productivity are probably the first persons to walk out the door. So high turnover is another consequence of not focusing on management development. And I think, I know I've certainly heard it. Many folks say, don't leave the company, I leave the person. I had a bad manager and I just couldn't stay any longer. And so management is a set of skills, and as much as it is an attitude and a perspective, and we all want to keep really great employees, and if we don't pay attention to who's managing them, that turnover issue can grow. Another consequence of lack of management development is poor decision making. Not really knowing how to make choices and to lead into the future really affects the day-to-day operations as well as strategic planning. So poor decision making and not really understanding what do I need to take into consideration, how do I make a good decision, what are the things I need to really understand in order to make good decisions. That kind of goes hand in hand with missed opportunities to identify and capitalize on trends, technologies, market opportunities. This really lines up nicely with the innovation that I talked about earlier, that if a manager doesn't have the mindset of looking for those opportunities, really understanding what's going on in the organization as well as the marketplace, opportunities are oftentimes just missed completely. And then you're wondering, why are we losing market share? Why are our numbers not as strong as we want them to be? And you're playing catch up as opposed to really leading the organization with new ideas and so forth. Another aspect of not training managers is allowing a resistance to change, to kind of perpetuate. And the ability to adapt is so critical in today's workplace, in today's business world, in today's economy. Nothing, more important than understanding how things are going to change. They're not the same today as they were last year. They're not going to be the same next year. And so good managers really understand that adaptability and the ability to be effective and to lead an organization really depend on that ability to embrace change and determine what the needs are, so that an organization can continue to evolve and to stay competitive. The last thing I have here is the loss of competitive advantage. If we have all the other factors going on as a result of not sufficiently developing managers, at the end of the day, the organization is not going to be as competitive as it would like to be. The erosion of competitiveness really is a consequence of not investing in the managers who may outperform or outmotivate those who are not involved in management development. So kind of the good, if you do, and then if you don't, the kinds of experiences that your organizations may end up having. So Joni, I don't know if we have any comments from from the chat yet, if folks want to share any,
Yeah, Carlie, we do have a couple of chats from
great,
people.
great.
People talking about, if you invest in your team, they won't depend on you as much and are able to make better decisions. And loss of tribal knowledge. One thing that this makes me think of that I know you're able to talk a little bit about is succession planning. Often people don't think about training people until they've got the senior talent that's walking out the door for either retirement or to pursue another opportunity. So can you talk a little bit about how investing in people will help with that succession planning?
Well, I mean, it's, having the right people is the first step. So hiring the right people and then preparing them for future opportunities that, they may contribute at a higher level with their organization. And again, the downside, is that your organization is caught off guard in a situation where you don't have the bench strength to step in and to take on more responsibility and contribute at a higher level. That doesn't happen by just wishing for it. That actually has to take, it's a deliberate effort on the part of an organization to understand that we have to prepare our people and have them be ready when whether it's retirement, which maybe might be a little more easy to predict, or somebody leaving for a different opportunity elsewhere, unexpectedly, or other things that can happen that are, that are going to happen. They're not it's not just maybe it's going to happen, it's going to happen. And the question really is, are you ready? And have you put the pieces in place that ensure your organization has continuity of leadership over time, that the folks at the very top have invested in and prepared those mid-level managers so that when the opportunity comes for them, they can step in confidently.
Yeah. Thank you, Carlie. I know you're going to talk a little bit about it as we go on, but I know that I talk to CEOs all the time who are talking about those next level leaders that don't necessarily have the managerial chops from some of those, what I hesitate to call soft skills, because I just think they're skills, but those skills and that experience guiding teams through change and, moving on to what's next. But I know you got some more great stuff to cover.
That's okay. Talking about the real world is the easiest thing to do, because I think we've all worked in organizations, we've all been part of organizations where we probably have seen a mix of what I've just talked about. The organizations that do a great job of investing in management, development and talent that they have, and some organizations on the other end of the spectrum, but I think most are somewhere in the middle. We do some of these things well, and maybe, have some misses. No organization is absolutely perfect. But just being reminded was really kind of my goal here in these early comments in the discussion, is really just to say, hey, let's just remember what happens if you do, what happens if you don't. I can't help but I want to take us into kind of the extreme end of this, and hopefully you don't have a whole lot of experience with toxic leadership in your organizations, but it is oftentimes one situation that we find ourselves a bit off guard, and we're not really prepared for the consequences of toxic leadership and how that really impacts our organizations. So this is really a style of leadership characterized by behaviors and attitudes that ultimately just have a complete negative effect on other individuals in the organization, whole teams, and even the entire organization if it gets to an extreme level. And some of the things that, I'm sorry, I skipped a slide. Sorry about that. Some of the things that you may see, and again, hopefully you don't see all of this at one time. But the toxic leadership characteristics include folks that are willing to manipulate or control or exploit others for personal gain, so that kind of abuse of power. You know, they have a role, they have a title that, you know, they take steps to maintain or gain even more power. Toxic leadership also tends to come along with poor communication. And by that, I don't mean just like they stumble over their words. This is really about dismissive, disrespectful, withholding important information, so that the consequence is really the lack of a creation of no trust across a team. Micromanagement. I think we've all experienced a bit of micromanagement somewhere along the way in our work life, but in the case of toxic leadership, it's really excessive control, stifling creativity, not allowing people to have a certain amount of autonomy. And the result of that is a diminishment of innovation within your organization. Another characteristic of toxic leadership is lack of empathy, not it's just really disregarding the feelings and the concerns and the well-being of others, you know, whether it's direct reports, peers, etc. And that comes with a creation of a culture where people are afraid, they have anxiety, and morale is just really poor. Bullying and intimidating is a I'm sorry, I skipped over blame shifting, and I think that this is a toxic behavior that I would say, unfortunately, you do see more than we'd like to really recognize in many of our organizations. It's just the idea that, you know, an individual doesn't take responsibility for the mistakes that they make. They're not accountable. They point fingers and they try to shift responsibility or blame onto someone else for things that they've had a hand in, that they may have actually been responsible for. And that can be very subtle, but you know it when it's happening, and it creates, again, a lack of trust, lack of accountability, and so forth. Bullying and intimidating, you know, this is, you know, harassment and intimidation tactics that result in employees feeling unsafe and threatened. And again, that's kind of on the extreme end of toxic leadership. Resistance to feedback. You may have leaders who you know don't listen, don't hear critical feedback, don't hear feedback that's designed to help them improve, and that's really comes from a place of not being able to recognize one's own flaws and limitations and areas for improvement. And I think that from a business standpoint, toxic leadership very often is driven by a short-term focus, where I'm just trying to have results. I'm going to get them however I get them, so that my personal interest is served, and the long-term, you know, well-being of the organization is really not considered. And so toxic leadership, hopefully, none of you have experienced somebody who has most or all of these things going on, but it's real, and it has the kind of impacts that I was starting to discuss earlier. Skip my slides, sorry for jumping ahead. But it's important to understand that these impacts really make a difference. And at the end of the day, your business is not as successful and as strong and competitive as it needs to be for the future to be bright. So we have employees who are disengaged, who are leaving, who are stressed out and depressed and anxious. They're not contributing good ideas. They're not creative because they have this cloud of toxic leadership over them, where they don't feel willing or able to bring those ideas to the forefront, to share those ideas, you know, you end up with an environment, a workforce that's not delivering at the 150% that you need them to be, not even 100%. When they leave, that high turnover turns into reputational damage. Because people talk, right? People talk. And it's not going to stay inside the four doors or the four walls of your organization. It does put you at risk of legal action, lawsuits, regulatory investigations, and so forth. And strategically, an atmosphere that allows for toxic leadership really fails to have strategic alignment, to have everybody pointing in the same direction, everybody committed to the same outcomes for the organization. The idea being that you miss lots of opportunities and you're not as competitive as you could be if your management team was well developed and producing and encouraging the engagement and the innovation that exists within your workforce.
So Carlie, you bring up something great. I just have to jump in on the
Yeah, that's
toxic
okay.
leadership. So sometimes I have a little bit of it, I call it toxic leadership as well, but very often we see people that they only tick off one or two of these
Right.
boxes, right?
Right.
Most of us would get rid of the person that ticks off all of these boxes.
Yeah.
So often what we see is that there's one or two of them, but they're causing significant issues within the organization. And often this can happen with some of the nicest and most well-meaning people that are also invested in your organization. So we know that through development, we can
Yeah.
make people aware of their behaviors and often do better. So can you talk a little bit about how you've seen people trained or helped in these in stemming these bad habits?
Well, and I think that you're exactly right that we hire people out of a belief that they're going to make a contribution, and they come into our organization, ready to go and full of vim and vigor. But over time, none of us is perfect. I said that once or twice already. None of us is perfect. And so shortcomings that limit that person's ability to contribute successfully, they may not even see it. They may have a blind spot. You're exactly right, Shay, and so the idea that you would leave somebody alone and not provide them with the opportunity to improve is not a good business decision, first of all, and it begins with awareness. It begins with them being aware. And so leadership within your organization has a role of communicating expectations, modeling good behavior, showing what they're looking for, and providing that feedback. And then in the instance where someone needs more, whether it's professional coaching from outside your organization, mentoring from within your organization, or formal training that might be of some benefit to turn some of these situations around. It's not a one size fits all. There's a variety of ways that these behaviors can be corrected, and oftentimes with folks, they don't know any better. And by learning some new things, getting new information, seeing things through a different frame, creating more awareness of their personal impact on others, you end up with a person whose chances of success are significantly improved.
Absolutely. Well, Carlie, we've got a question in the chat.
Yeah.
What training would you recommend for supervisors and managers? This person says they have a lot of employees that go from hourly to salary. I will tell you that this is a lot of our members.
Yes,
they go from hourly to salary and have no experience, and the company doesn't want to spend a lot of money to train. Well, rest assured, you don't have to spend gazillions of dollars to train, but spending a little to get a lot of return can be quite helpful. Can you talk a little bit about
Sure. Well,
what you
you've,
would recommend.
you've set me up for the next part of my talk. So whoever asked that question, thank you. Thank you for the segue. Because at Catapult, something that has been part of our training program for a very long time, we really consider it our flagship set of courses. It's really designed around management development. And it is the Management Advantage. It's a certificate program and it's designed for employees throughout their management journey. So it really begins with folks who are still at an individual contributor level, folks who may be under consideration for moving up into management, or even at a particular point are leading teams, but they don't have supervisory roles. So two programs where, you know, that level can be addressed. And then as a new manager, I think that's the question that the chat poster was really asking about, is our fundamentals of supervision. And I think that word fundamentals is so important because it really is foundational training for people who are now responsible for getting work done through others. You know, they might have become an expert in whatever their function is, but that doesn't necessarily translate into knowing how to get that same work done through other people. And so fundamentals of supervision is our training course, our certificate program. It covers 3 days, and that can be done in a half day, once a week, over 6 weeks, or it can be done in a 3-day session in our public training. We also offer it in our private group training as an option, because so many organizations are facing this phenomenon of, I've got people, they don't have management skills, I need them to be successful in this new role, and how do I get them there? And I'll talk a little bit more about what it looks and feels like in just a second. The last of our certificate programs in the Management Advantage is really designed for people as they move through leadership, through management roles. And there's 3 levels of that. The relational leader, which continues to focus on managing people and the skills that you need to be successful in that. With the multidimensional leader, you begin the transition of, I'm still managing people, but I'm also managing a line of business. I'm becoming more organizationally focused in my leadership and my management responsibility. And then the final one is strategic leadership, where you're really looking at what are the skills and abilities that I need to have to lead organizationally across multiple parts of an organization. The things like, you know, data-driven decision making, and so forth. So let me tell you a little bit about these courses. So I mentioned team leader, which a lot of organizations will pull folks into responsibility for managing a project, you know, to get something done. And they don't actually have supervisory responsibility, but they need to be prepared with influence skills and how do you work with a team and so forth. So you see the topics that we cover in team leader: maximizing the performance of your team, communicating and coaching your team, problem solving, and then motivating the team. And again, this is all designed for somebody whose primary lever is influence, and not, I'm not, you know, they're not writing someone's performance review at the end of the year. These are team leaders who are taking on a responsibility for getting a particular project done. And so some examples I'll just show you of some of the ways that we deliver this. We use quite a bit of video, you know, the time management video, quote and content from current authors. Robert Maxwell is quoted here about how a leader, you know, functions. Very important to help people understand some basic principles. A team leader versus a manager. How do you distinguish between that? And then very important in adult learning that you give people time to reflect You give people time to practice, you give people time to interact and to engage in the learning, so that they're experiencing and thinking about their own workplace and how they're going to use this information when they go back and put it all together. With fundamentals of supervision, the topics we cover there start with effective supervising. How do you become credible and trustworthy in this new role? A lot of times we hear from our participants. Last week, I was doing the same job that the folks I'm now supervising are doing. And so what are some steps that you can take to create a different relationship? That involves delegating. It involves effective communication. As a supervisor, you're ultimately going to have to have effective tools for managing conflict within your team. Hopefully not a lot, but better to be prepared for it than not. And then again, motivating that work group, that team of people that work with you. And just to show you some examples from fundamentals of supervision, we do like to sprinkle in humor as a great tactic for helping people remember things and to engage, in the learning. We always spell out the objectives for a particular topic. What is it that you're going to learn as we go through this, and what should you be able to do as a result of this learning? The engagement that I mentioned earlier, a lot of our training involves people reacting to questions by way of polls, so that they can see, not only respond with their own information, but they can kind of see where they line up in terms of the rest of the class, the rest of the participants. It helps people calibrate their own thinking with peers. And then I love this visual, and I just wanted to point out that visuals are important. Many of us are visual learners. We learn lots of different ways, and so in addition to a facilitator and who's going to be talking through things that you can read on the screen, the visuals and the pictures that kind of help people to really solidify in their mind what it is that's being talked about. The final example that I'm going to give you is the relational leader. And again, a list of the topics that include diversity, equity, and inclusion, how you create a productive workplace, using feedback, coaching for growth, navigating difficult conversations, and managing work-life balance, all designed to help participants to understand these concepts. And I just picked the first one on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I love this visual, really representative of all an array of beautiful colors, and our workforce is an array as well. Helping people define things and understand what certain words mean is an important grounding in the learning that we do, but then immediately understanding how does that apply in your workplace, and bringing forward ideas that folks may be unfamiliar with. I think that's part of learning. We don't know it all. We come into these classes to learn. And I love the 3-minute story. So throughout much of our training, we ask people to think about what they've learned and share it out. And as a result, they not only have to think through their own learning, so they process it and it gets solidified, but they also hear how other people have learned the same information, and the benefit of hearing what others in that same class have heard. They may pick up on something extra. We don't all hear the same things when we're learning. So the 3-minute story is something that we think is really valuable, because at the end of the day, the facilitator is there to take people on a journey. So much of the learning is done between the participants and learning their experiences and gaining some new perspective. So I just wanted to share those. We also have, and I didn't take I'm just going to show you, as I mentioned before, the management journey includes seeing the big picture and then building a vision for the organization. So we have courses and topics designed specifically for that level of management within your team. So Management Advantage helps you to take your employees all the way through the management journey. It's not really supposed to be something that they do all in one fell swoop, because you want to bring people at a time where they're really going to be ready for that learning. But it's a great place to know that you can bring your teammates, your employees into management, support them through the process, and enable them to grow as managers throughout their time.
Thank you, Carlie. This is great to look at all of these. And I want to remind everybody that you can take these courses both as a certificate program, but you can also send people to these courses individually. You think they need a little bit of building and sustaining engagement and a little bit of data-driven leadership, you can absolutely take them as individual courses. So, Carlie, when you look at the organizations that we work with, what challenges do you see when they're trying to implement a program across the company, or even for a group of leaders or potential leaders?
Well, challenges, obviously we know that organizations, you already mentioned this, budgets are tight and the need is great. And so how do you decide, how do you go about, developing a program? And I think that the key step in developing, successfully is that you have leadership buy-in. And, I'm assuming that most of the folks on our call are HR leaders, people and cultural leaders within your organization, and really want, to contribute to the overall success of your organization through these types of programs, and demonstrating to your management and getting them to buy into it. I think it's really, really important.
One I've heard used often, but I still think it's an oldie but goodie, which is, what happens if I train people and they leave? And,
Yeah.
the counter is, what happens if you don't train them?
If you don't train them.
So
and they stay, yeah.
Yeah. You don't train them and they stay, and the issues persist across the organization.
Yeah.
So I'm going to open it up to anybody in the audience. If you'd like to either raise your hand or come off camera, however you would like, or even just come off mute and ask a question. We'd be happy to answer questions, or shoot it in the chat. We can talk about exactly how you can implement something like this in your area.
So while you're doing that, I'll share a story. You had asked me in preparation for this program, examples where management development positively affected retention and performance in an organization. And we work with a nonprofit here in Charlotte. I'm probably not going to say who it is. I probably shouldn't reveal that. But we work with them to develop a leadership development program for their employees, that had kind of the first level of supervisory management responsibility. And using our courses and our instructors over the last at least 5 years to do that. And I'm relatively new to Catapult, but I got invited to go. They conduct a graduation ceremony. And at that graduation ceremony, we learned that about half the participants in that class, I'm not talking about the previous years, but just in that class, had received promotions into, greater responsibility. And the leadership of the organization said it was because of the things that they had learned, that they behaved differently, they contributed differently. And they have really embraced this to the point that they've now instituted, and we've worked with them to create not just for a beginning level manager leader, but their middle and their executive level within the organization are doing a similar leadership program, training program. So I like success stories where our contribution to our members really make that kind of difference.
That's wonderful. And so for what we also see for people who say, oh, I can't take everyone out of the field or out of the office or out of wherever they are, many of our organizations will create it can be a simple program where as someone is moving up or stepping into a bigger role or just needing ongoing training, they will put people through same courses. So they have that shared language, they have
Right.
that shared experience, and then you
Yes.
start to build that culture that is really helpful across the organization.
I think that's so important, and it's oftentimes not really thought about when you think about, I'm gonna send people to training, that they do have the ability over time, even if they don't all do it at the same time, to think, with this similar tool kit and perspective that comes out of that training, and collectively, that can be so powerful.
Absolutely, when you get people talking within the organization. So I know we are about to hit our time, and we've had a great discussion today. Carlie, thank you so much. Do you have if you have any parting words, I'll give you a moment to.
I think I just would go back to the beginning and say it's the hiring and the retention of good talent that leads to everything else that your organization desires: innovation, competitive advantage, cultural alignment, and the training part of it is an important element that is an investment that yields long-term benefits to organizations. That investment, it really has to be seen just like we're going to build a new factory. That's an investment for the future. It's the same type of investment, because at the end of the day, you got to have people in that factory.
Absolutely, absolutely. That long-term investment in your people is key to sustaining and growing an organization and a culture. So I am going to wrap up with one wonderful reminder. We are exactly a month away from our HR Leadership Conference, which is the Future Workplace, on April 11th and 12th in Greensboro and virtually. That is filling up. We are super excited that we've got 2 days full of speakers. One thing I will let you know, that if you have one of you yourself or one of your team members who signs up, we do have some great content on the second day focused at CEOs. We will invite your CEO to join us for the second morning of the 12th at no additional charge. So you can maybe get them to learn about some of the things you're learning about that are important to influencing the culture of your organization. As we always try to remain both future thinking and as well as cognizant of your budget. The HR Leadership Conference is a economically friendly event, and you can come in for both days, or many people can drive home for the evening if they'd like. So please join us in Greensboro on April 11th and 12th, and you'll see Carlie and her team presenting some of this wonderful content that we've got. If you have questions, we'd be happy to stick around and answer them. But otherwise, I'm going to let everyone go on to the rest of their wonderful day. And thank you for joining us for Thinking Differently.
Thank you all so much.